Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Welcome back, and thanks for swinging by for another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. And I know you haven't listened to the episode yet, but I feel pretty good that if you're here, you're probably going to go forward after I say this. And I really appreciate it. I do have a great show for you. And my only ask of you this week is to share the podcast with one friend who's also interested in real estate investing and is not an active listener or follower. That would be awesome. This week, my guest is Laura Sides. She's only been in the game for a few years, and we're going to talk all about real estate investing as a family endeavor, as well as the asset classes that she and her family invest in. Let's do this. This is episode 108 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Laura Sides. Laura is new to this game, but she's been on a rampage since the pandemic. She's been flipping, doing short-term and mid-term rentals. Laura is a former teacher, turned stay-at-home mom, turned real estate investor with her whole family. Laura, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk to you. And I think this is a great episode for everybody, but especially for newer investors, because this is only 2.5 years in for you, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, great. So I want to start in one place and then we'll go back to the journey and how you found it. But why was it so important for you to involve your whole family, especially your kids, in the process of real estate investing as you got going?
So at the very beginning of this, we were kind of like very early mid-pandemic, and my family and I were in Florida, and I started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like, wow, there's so much more to just education and learning than what I was taught in school. And at that time, we were homeschooling because of the pandemic, our kindergartner. So we had kindergarten, pre-K, and like 2 years old. And I remember thinking, like, I can teach them so much more than just what I'm teaching them from these textbooks, which even at that young age, I don't know what sparked it in me, but I remember reading the quotes to my husband while we're in Florida. I'm like, we got to use our money to make money, babe, and we're going to show the kids how to do it too. And
I love it.
Yeah, we came back and we bought our first flip and then we put them all to work. So it was important to show them that, yes, the education piece was really important, math and reading, but there's a whole nother world out here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate for teaching kids about money and investments so much earlier. I don't even think my kids through all of high school even really learned about personal finance or money. And that's just a disaster because there's so many more opportunities out there now with the internet and other ways to make income that it would really behoove schools to, help kids on this journey so they can, because then they rely on us as parents. And it's like, well, I mean, you don't want to listen to me, to teach you about checkbooks and investing. Why did you pick up the Purple Book? That's the important question.
That's a great question because do you know what's wild is I used to, like you said in the intro, I used to be a middle school biology teacher. So I had bought the book sometime when I was teaching. And the reason I know that is because when I opened it up in Florida, the hall pass from the school that I used to teach at was my bookmarker. So I must have got like a chapter or two in. And at the time, maybe it wasn't speaking to me for maybe I didn't think it was possible for me or it was too big. And I just must have put it down. So why I picked it back up then, I don't know, but it was definitely like the stars aligned because that was a catalyst for change.
That's amazing because I think a lot of people probably in that situation, they bought it. So if you're listening and you have the book on the shelf, just go get it and see if right now maybe is the time. Because like you said, you can get 2 chapters into really any book and just not really be feeling it at the time. But something must have changed during the time when you picked it up. And then that it started to resonate right away differently than before.
And it was not my construction or house like, or real estate knowledge. That was not what changed. But as I read it, it just made sense. And I was like, how can we do this?
Yeah. I mean, when you grabbed it, do you think were you thinking long term for income, generational wealth, legacy, or were you looking for something else to do outside of, traditional money making?
Yeah, I don't think I had this huge plan when I first got into it. I was just like, how can we take this money to make a little bit extra money? At that time when we're in Florida, I'm like, we could buy our own Florida condo and use it as an expense, use it to make money, or at least offset the mortgage.
So now going back before all this started, before you got the Purple Book for the second time, were you interested in real estate when you were younger? Was it something on your mind at all?
I had no clue about anything real estate related. In fact, we still live in the first house that we bought 13 years ago, which is a big part of why we're able to invest the way that we are, because our expenses are just so reasonable. So my husband did a really good job setting us up, but I had no previous real estate knowledge. I didn't come from a family my family was very much poor dad mentality. My dad was the director of financial aid for a college, and you go to work, and then that's what money you have at the end of the week.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think from what I read, a lot of your interest as you got going was from social media and Instagram, right?
Huge piece of the puzzle was other people sharing their stories on podcasts or just Instagram and telling me that I could do it. So by learning through watching and listening and seeing that they did it was very inspiring to me.
Yeah, I think that I personally and a lot of my friends, we do look across social media. We were talking before, and like there's a lot of garbage on there. But I think once you can see the stuff that connects with you, then you just keep selecting to go back to it. Were there people that you were watching and you were like, you finally decided, wait, I can do that because they were not doing this not that long ago?
Yes. And I think just like speaking belief into you, right? And then surrounding yourself, not just in social media, but in life. Like my mortgage broker was like, yes, you can do this, or other, not necessarily friends, because that was outside of my friend bubble, right? They didn't understand what I was doing. But when I could talk to somebody online through Instagram where I'm just DMing them and able to ask questions and they were genuinely answering them, or the mortgage broker that, helped me with my first agreement of sale contract and just said, we'll walk you through this, have been so critical. And it was just kind of like, not this big plan. It was like one step and the next step and the next step.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about authenticity as it relates to investors and, Instagram or any social media. Because what I found, and obviously I found you looking around on Instagram, and I was like, wow, you seem completely genuine and you're willing to take everybody along with the ride, whether you really you don't have 50 years of experience. Why was it so important to you to be authentic about your journey, and how do you think that can help others?
So I think about 6 months before I started my sides investing Instagram page, I was following on my personal Instagram. And like you said, there was just a mix of authentic people and then people I'd picked up along the way. And I'm like, it's time for me to start my own page. And then once I just funneled it to people that I really connected with and could learn from their journey and be inspired by, that really supercharged what I was doing, because then I was just seeing the real and like really learning from just those 30-second clips of what they were sharing. And it was important for me to start that so that I could share it with other people, even though I didn't know what I was doing, right? I think I started it just when I was finishing my first flip. So that's really not chronicled on there. But I was like, I've learned and been inspired by other people doing it from the ground up. Like, why not share too?
Yeah, but I bet now you would go back and share that first flip, when at the time it was like, oh, well, who am I to be sharing this? But now no, it can really help people because you found people on there like, wow, look at those mistakes that can help you avoid those mistakes.
100% agree. Yeah, I wish I would have shared through that, but I think my nerves didn't allow me to. Like, I didn't have enough belief in myself yet and my husband's even said to me, and I respect his opinion, right? But he's like, what business do you have telling other people what to do, what's going on, right? And I said, it's because it helped me so much. It was so inspiring to me that if I were to go back, in 5 years from now, if I were to go back and try and retell my journey, I don't think I would remember everything that it took to get me where I'm going.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that I think about social media, especially from an investing point of view, is like I'll put out, whatever I want. It's up to people if they want to watch it. So, like, it's really no effect on me if they think I'm stupid or anything. It makes no difference. I won't know. Across social media, we all get women much more than men get just dumb comments there, but. Yeah, great. Just delete them and block them. I mean, it's just like kind of part of the process. But yeah, I think taking what you learned from what you were getting out of watching investors, because really Instagram is the thing that really helped you with Rich Dad Poor Dad to really get off the sidelines and say, hey, as a family, we can do this.
Absolutely. Between that book and Instagram and just being able to you can instantly, you see all the posts online, right, about like putting yourself in a room of bigger people than you. As a stay-at-home mom, I can't always do that. I can't fly out to conferences and do those things because our kids are so young still.
Yeah.
Whereas when I get on my Sides Investing Instagram, I'm instantly walking into a room full of other people I can have a real estate investing conversation with, that I can bounce ideas off of, and that I can share, insights with. And that has been really critical to my journey for sure.
Yeah. And I think, being a stay at home mom can also be kind of like lonely. You feel like, well, you don't have a quote real job, even though it's obviously the hardest job in the world. But like people are looking at like, you don't have a community wherever. It's just like, oh, you're at the pickup line.
Yeah.
That's like the thing. And I know it from doing it during those years. But this kind of journey that you took is something that now when you share it, it's like it can become something different than it was before.
You're absolutely right. So I am an extrovert to the extreme. So coming home with my kids felt right in my heart, and I really love that. But I definitely had this feeling like there can be more than this. And when we started doing that first flip, I remember feeling like I'm coming back to life. Like I have like relit the fire, right? I enjoyed working with adults, seeing a project through, collaborating, involving my kids in it because I love them. They are a huge part. But then I also felt like I'm teaching them more than just ABCs.
Yeah, that's a really important life lesson too, because I think, being a stay-at-home parent sometimes feels like you almost feel bad about yourself for wanting to do more. Like somehow that's against the kids. It's like, well, no, this is fun, but I'd like something that's like, for me also. And then you were able to involve them in the flip too, which I think is really cool.
Oh, it's been great. It's been great for all of us, and just their understanding of what we're doing, and they feel happy and excited and, pride in what we're doing. They knew I was coming here today, and they're like, "You're doing a podcast, Mom? That's awesome."
Yeah. And then they can hear you talk about them. I just think, my kids went through a bunch of flips, and as a child, I was the child of a house flipper and investor. So, we'd get the house exactly the best way. And then my dad would come in and say, "Hey, we're moving." And I'm like, why? But I slowly started to figure out, and he was telling me, and you're doing that now for your kids. Like you said, maybe they're too young to really take in all the Rich Dad Poor Dad principles, but at some point it's going to sink in, like we're doing this for a reason. And also it's fun.
Yeah. What age should I start reading that as a bedtime story?
Yeah, right away. I mean, that book to me is so easy for even younger people to kind of connect to in some point, just because there's the son father relationship and the kind of other, the other dad.
Yeah.
So I think like in there, I mean, the book that a lot of I'll think of it in a second. Of course, it's right as I'm about to think of it, it just goes away.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I if I would go back now, I'd probably be reading that along with a bunch of the, Pat the Bunny and Pokemon books along the way.
They truly are interested, and they love learning, and they're absorbing so much more than I realize. And why I know that 2 years in now is because at the time my little guy was 2, but we hear it coming out now and they understand, right? So like, are you going to midterm rent the beach house this winter, Mom, or are we going to use it? And
That's
they
awesome.
know why we do the things we do. So it's been nice. It's made very interesting dinner conversation, and it's a great learning tool.
Yeah. And I've said this across the board because I talk to a lot of people. Almost everybody who's been on the podcast, their partners are, involved and on board, because it would be impossible to get to this level without. But how important is it to you that both your husband and your kids are interested in this? And it's not just like your side thing that nobody cares about.
Yeah, I absolutely love that question. They've been huge, right? So my husband's dad owned a construction business, a contracting business. So my husband grew up being very handy and knowing
Yeah.
different things. So he has a big job that takes a lot of his time, like 9 to 5. But he is really just very ultra supportive of me. If I need him to walk through a situation and say like, yeah, you shouldn't use that plumber again, or let's tweak this, right? And in the beginning, he did a lot of the work because we didn't know that we were going to make a profit or what a profit looked like. So we kind of like powered through. So his handiness has saved us in so many ways. And just, he's kind of like, go ahead, right? So on the first flip, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And just his belief in me. So it's not always that he has the time, but his belief and understanding has been great. So he's like, go ahead, babe, just don't lose money. And in 6 weeks, when I made $100,000, he's like, okay, go ahead.
Keep doing it. Get a couple. Yeah.
Oh, wow,
Let's keep this train going. Yeah. So what was the first property? Tell us about that. What did you invest in? What was the price point? And then what did you do with it? I think it was a flip.
Yep. Our first property was a flip. It was supposed to be, I had come home from Florida reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I started pulling the financing for a Florida condo. I had an agent team down there working on it. And then I was going to use a property management company, like set it and forget it type of thing. And I went out to get my trash can one day, and my neighbor's walking on the street, and she was older. She had lived in the house for like 35 years. They had smoked in it, and she was lonely and she wanted to downsize. I said, hey, Miss Sherry, how are you doing this morning? And she goes, I need to sell my house. And I was like, oh, what do you think you'd want for it? And she said 300,000. I was like, Miss Sherry, if you list it on the market, you could probably get more than that. And she said she had already met with an agent. An agent wanted her to declutter it, have the house painted, which it needed all of those things, right? And she couldn't be bothered with that. She was older, didn't have the family support. And I said, you can get more for it if you want to list it. And she goes, I don't want to list it. And I go, I'll take it. And she goes, do you want to ask your husband first? And I was like, no, that's good. I don't think he needs to know, right? So it happened just like that. But it was so mutually beneficial because it was this huge weight off of her shoulders. She said the number. I said absolutely. So there's a lot of value in knowing your market and being able to quickly decide like that.
Yeah. And to know that like you're not trying to, do anything bad to her. That's a good price for her. There's definitely some stuff you're going to have to do with it. Numbers work for you guys. That's a win-win. That's what you're always looking for. It's the best case scenario.
Yep. And then I told her, you can take what you need to where you're going. I'll help you figure that out. I'll hire the moving company, and I will take care of the rest of the things that are in your house. So again, it was just like being flexible on terms and meeting her needs. So anyway, I came home and I was like, babe, we're buying Miss Sherry's house. And he's like, all right, let's do it, But that was the best
proximity
thing.
Works, like to be able to be next door, that like really helps on a first one. You don't have to travel. You can check up on it at 9:00. You can do whatever you want.
We put the kids to bed. We'd have like Wi-Fi monitors and we'd go over and work for hours. Yeah. And it was such a learning experience. And it was a really cool thing to do with my husband, right?
Yeah.
And I could pop over real quick to meet with contractors or whatnot. So we bought that at $300, and I think we put $30,000 into it in 4 weeks and sold it for $465.
That's amazing. How hard was it to get the smoke out? I know from growing up in a smoke household that it's not for me. So I actually can't even go into smoker houses as an agent or an investor. I just can't. I'm allergic. I can't do it. How hard was that? I mean, I know you have to do several layers of this special primer and everything just to get it in, obviously rip the carpet, but the walls really take it in. So how did that go, especially on your first time?
That's a good question. So what's cool is we got to use a lot of local contractors too. And our other neighbor owns his own painting company. So he would go over and work with it.
Amazing.
It's like great open communication. We took up all the flooring, right? And had all the hardwood floors in the whole house sanded down. So that was good. Yeah. What happened was we found out that she primarily smoked in the one room of the house. And he called me. He's like, Laura, I've never seen anything like this before. It was just bleeding through the kills, like the nicotine, I guess. Yeah. So I think they sanded it down, stripped it, and then repainted it. But you're right. It wasn't nothing. It was definitely would have been more expensive had we gone with a regular painter. But I think he's like, I just want to help you. Let's do this. And we just worked through it.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're finding even on your first investment that the magic of relationships is what places you in this. And now as you've moved forward, has that continued to be an important part of your journey? I think some new investors think like, oh, well, I'm just trying to get a deal. But you weren't trying to get a deal. You bumped into your neighbor, and then your other neighbor's the painter, and like, wow, this is all working great. But it's probably because you're good. You said you're high extrovert. So you're building relationships in the neighborhood, and like, oh, wait, now look, these are really starting to help out.
I absolutely love that piece of this is the relationship building with the smaller contractors in our community. And then we just get on a text, right? Hey guys, I bought another flip. I'm closing this date. Can we get in there? Because that's probably my biggest question when other people are saying like, I've always wanted to flip a house, but I'm worried about the contractors, right? And I'm like, just be friendly and kind. Tell them this is what you're going to do. And you pay them when they want to be paid and be really ultra responsive and communicative and a nice person, right? I'll show up with a tray of hoagies or drinks or whatever and just like have the conversation and treat you like you are, because you are a part of the team. I can't be successful if you're not successful. And I want them to feel really appreciated. And I think that and now usually if I tell them I have a flip, they'll bump me right to the front of their line, which is great. So it's just been, because I'm easy to work with. I'm going to pay them as soon as they're done. And that's been great.
Yeah, but great advice too on the team though. I have a list of providers who they work on my house. So when I refer them out or I do a flip, like I know that's exactly what they're doing. Again, over time, sometimes the relationships still don't work out. Not everything stays perfect, when you go to volume, but you keep doing the same thing. You just build a new relationship and you want to have people that you can text and get answers from instead of trying to work with a larger company. Although sometimes that works as well. Sometimes you just need kind of like pros to come in and just do it. But I prefer what you're doing as well. Because then, like you said, you can go make that text, have someone swing by and give you an estimate in advance before you even need to do anything to decide, is this even worth it, with, maybe structural problems or something like that.
It's been great. That was probably what you just said was probably one of the most surprising things to me, that how they perform on one job isn't how they're going to perform on every job. And I was super surprised. Like, this has been a huge learning experience for me because this is all new. And I was surprised how disappointed I was. Like, man, I thought we had a good thing going here. Why would you mess this up?
It's one of the craziest things I think about real estate investing and flipping that nobody talks about. Like, for those of us who don't really pay an entire crew, we're not mass flippers. I have my crew, but they're not employed by me. It's happened to me, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 times over my career where I'm like, wow, that went great. And then the next time the prices are double. And I'm like, how? But how's that possible? We just did that. Like, if I'm giving you more business, your prices are supposed to go down, not up. I don't want to be the cash cow. And like you said, quality of work too, depending on who they bring in or how many jobs they have. I've found that usually they have too many jobs, and I always want my job to be done quickest. I don't want a 9 to 12. I want 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was interesting and definitely a pivot to me. But it's just like you said, you just kind of rebuild the list. You won't be the first person I call next time. And I haven't had that experience too many times, but for me, being able to say like, well, that relationship isn't going to work was tougher than I expected it to be, but it's just been a learning and growing experience.
Yeah, I think, though, for somebody new in investing, it's probably empowering, though, to be able to say no and not say like, well, I'm new, so I'll just accept, all your estimates look great. It's like, no, now I know I'm on second one. That's a terrible estimate. Like, you're trying to trick me. You're out. Is that something that you're learning more as you go now that you have 5 or more projects complete?
Yes. And I think what made it easier is doing a lot of the first one ourselves, because then you immediately know what you want to pay for and what you don't want to pay for.
Right.
And when someone gives me a number, I'm not, I think we had a union electrician, like somebody studying to be whatever it is right before you're a full union guy.
Yeah.
He came in and did like all of our outlets and switches for us, and the number that he gave me was so low. I'm like, is that all you're charging me?
Yeah.
So it's definitely been a learning experience and on like what things are worth and what the value of that is. So
hey, this is Jonathan. Thanks for listening to another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. On this brief interlude, I wanted to tell you that we have a mailing list. I actually don't love mailing lists. There's so much. This is not an automated mailing list where you get on a drip campaign. These are written once a month, will eventually be at once a week again by me, direct, and they're not spammy. So if you want to sign up for our mailing list, you can go to bit.ly/streamlined with a D mail. Bit.ly is bit.ly/streamlined mail. See you there.
So after the first flip, did you go into a flip next, or is that when you started to get into short-term, midterm?
I was probably halfway through the first flip, or actually not even halfway. It was the very beginning of the first flip, and I could see out my window and I had organized the movers for her to move, but I could see out my window that she was having friends help her move, which is totally fine. But the gentleman that was helping her move had a cane and like a limp, and he was carrying this box, and I'm like, I got to go help him, right? So I'm like, what are we doing? That's all right. All right, here we go.
One box at a time.
I'm like, okay. She was a little controlling, but it was fine. So I rode over because the place that we had her in was like a 55 and older community. So I rode with him or followed him over to help unload the boxes because I didn't want him to have to do it by himself. Well, we're unloading the boxes and he goes, are you the one buying that house? And I was like, I am. And he goes, well, I have a house for you. And I'm thinking in my head, is this how this works? Holy cow.
Everybody's listening. No, that doesn't happen to me. I go around the neighborhood every day knocking on doors. No one wants to give me a house.
It was wild.
What's your magic sauce here?
Right. And I go, oh, you do? Go on. And he goes, it's 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms on an acre right outside of Bethany Beach, Delaware, which, if for anyone listening that doesn't know, is a very popular, very high-end, like beach town, about 2 hours from my primary. And I'm thinking in my head, there is no way I can afford whatever he's about to say, right? Because I said, how much do you think you'd want for it? And he said, $200,000. And that was and I'm like, play it cool.
Yeah. Relax. Don't say yes too quick. Yes, I want it. Yeah. Done. Right? Deal's done. Yeah.
So he's like, well, I'll be back tomorrow. I'll bring pictures. And he literally brings a Polaroid picture album, like one of the dollar store albums. And he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, I love it. I'm interested. So we bought our second house. And so I walked into my front door and it was my father-in-law, who's our general contractor, and my husband sitting there. And I'm like, gentlemen, we're buying a beach house. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, turn it
quickly when you present what the at least the idea of the Polaroids that you saw and the price, they're like, actually, this sounds great.
Yes, exactly. But at the time, everyone was like, that wasn't part of your plan, right? Like you were going to flip in the area or buy in the area. Like, this is what you're going to do now. And I'm like, yes, it is what we're going to do. So that weekend I took my in-laws and our whole family down, and he gave us a tour around the house, around the property. And we said, yeah, we'll absolutely take it. And I said, listen, are you okay waiting? Because I had no idea about creatively financing anything at the time. So I'm like, are you okay waiting until I sell this house? And as soon as I sell this first house, then I'll plan to buy this house, right? So the profits from our first flip paid for the down payment for that and $35,000 renovation costs. And then I turned that property over to like a big box property manager because it was like, how fast can you get this thing up clearing the mortgage? And that summer, that was 2 summers ago now, it was doing 5 times what it cost us to own.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's such good advice for people too. If an opportunity presents itself, just out of nowhere, that's something to really take a look at, because you could go another 3-4 years and no one's going to just bump into you and say, hey, you want a beach house?
Oh, that was wild. It's probably doubled at this point, more than doubled in value. We're about to pull a HELOC on it. And it's just such a cool experience. It's been great for our kids, right? We have a beach house that I never thought I would have. So they can say they have a beach house that we use. We can share with our friends. We use it. We'll put it in like our kids' private school silent auctions to make money.
Oh, exactly. I've done that too. Yeah. I think short-term rentals, I've had them for 20, 25 years. We used to have them before, Airbnb existed. And it was because we like to use them.
Yeah.
And then like exactly what you said, we would send our friends there. If a friend was having a hard time, or say one of them like having trouble in their relationship, we're like, just go to the house. We had one in the Hamptons, we had a couple in Florida, we had them in California, and we would just use them as opportunities, because you can make so much, especially when you're in the Hamptons, it's a summer thing. Off season, our friends would just all go, because what do we care? we made like a ton of money in the summer. You're fine for the whole winter. So you can really do that. And then, like you said, you carve out a couple weeks in the summer for yourself and just block around that, get the enjoyment. And it's still a beach house. It doesn't have to be your primary where you're worried about everybody, touching your stuff.
Oh, yeah. And you don't have to pay for it, right?
Exactly.
It's self-sustaining, which is just mind-blowing. But I'm here to tell you, right? Like, even if we just talked about those first two deals, that all happened in 6 months where I flipped my first house and it wasn't difficult. And then we took those profits and we bought ourselves a beach house. And if I stopped there, that would have been life-changing. Like, that's been great. Not only did we use the profits to buy that, we had paid for an entire year of our kids' private school tuition. So we went from homeschool into private schools. And then I think we finished our basement.
Yeah. It was, so why keep going though? Is it something that's such a passion for you that you guys as a whole family, of course, your father-in-law is involved as well. You're like, let's just keep doing this. We're good at this.
Yes, become an absolute obsession.
Yeah.
But Grant Cardone says that's a good thing, right? So
yeah.
I fell in love with real estate, and I fell in love with how positively you can impact a community, how much you can work with the people, how much you can truly help people. And then, but you're also benefiting too. It truly, when it's done right, is a win-win all around. And I love every aspect of that.
Yeah, I think when you look across it, a lot of people think investing is just about money. And then when you say, oh, no, it's helping people, and they say, oh, well, you made money too. It's okay that both happen. That's what I would prefer. I would like to really help someone have a win-win situation where you get someone out of pre-foreclosure or help them, get to a new destination. But also, I am an investor. I would also like to make money. I don't have to make the most money on everything. And I think that's the greatest thing about doing multiple projects. When you really want to help someone and it's going to make you $15,000 less, I mean, okay, that's good. You have a bunch of other stuff going on.
Yeah. I would love to position myself to even be in more direct contact with sellers, because I absolutely do operate with integrity and honesty. And I'll give you as many options as you can. I just kind of have to put myself in front of these sellers so that they can have the options that other people might not be giving them. Because I really love the ability to help them in more ways than just get them out of their house.
Yeah. Well, so going for after property number 2 to 3, 4, or 5, how did you find those properties? Because if you tell us all that, hey, you're walking down the street and this lady at the grocery store said they have a house to sell, everybody's going to quit. So I know there's going to be another way. As you have started to scale up or at least look into a long-term future in it, how are you finding your deals now for the last couple?
So number 2 was wild, right? That hasn't happened since, but anyone listening to this, I would love for it to.
Right. I'm sure you're on the lookout everywhere in the neighborhood. Like, oh, here comes someone. They're either going to say hi or offer me a house to buy. I'm not sure, but I hope it's the latter.
I should spread the word a little more. And maybe that's a benefit to have still living in our primary residence 13 years later.
Yeah.
Knowing all the neighbors. So I should probably spread the word a little bit more. Number 3 was a wholesaler. So once I really got interested, once you do the first 2, you're like, how can I keep going? What does that look like? And I think somehow I got connected with a bigger wholesaling company in our area, New Western, and they had my name on their list. And I had touch base with one of their agents or whatever they're called, right? So I told them my buy box and my criteria. Well, I'm out for a jog one night and I get a text like, we have a house coming immediate. I think it's perfect for you. So as soon as I dropped my kids off at school the next day, I drove by the house. So I was there before they could even let me in to see it. And I was like, I will take it.
Yeah.
So again, right? Just being able to quickly make a decision. Like, this is the price. This is how, and that was my introduction to hard money because I didn't know how to fund it at the time. But I called my husband at work and I was like, babe, I need you to wire $15,000. So again, like the support of him came in great, right? He's like, do you want to talk about it? I'm like, you got to act fast, Glenn.
Well, I think, not only are you building your own personal track record by documenting it, on Instagram at this time, but you've built up that confidence so that your husband says, is this like a go? And you say, yeah. And he said, okay, sure. Just wire the money. Like you're proving not only to yourself, which is the most important, but also to your family. Like, hey, we are all in this together, but also don't try to do due diligence. I've already done it. I'm doing this part. He's working. So I think that's really, it's nice. And it's also, I think, very helpful for others to see that you can all work on this together. You don't both have to be full time in the investing, but it's great to be able to, knock the things back and forth.
Yeah, I think my 3-year-old was on site for that one. Like, oh, we're buying a house. I remember and my in-laws lived like not too far away. So I pulled in and I said to my father-in-law, I'm like, you're coming out of retirement again.
Well, you'll know that you've really made it when like your youngest child says, I'm not sure about the ARV on this one. And they're only like 4 or 5 years old. You really have built something at that point.
That's a great conversation, right? So we bought that through a wholesaler, and that went really well. So we got that for, I want to say it was probably 400,000, right around there, and put $50,000 or $60,000 into it and sold it for 605.
Wow.
And
you have a really good streak going to start, and I think it's because you're focused. I mean, you're really focused on this and looking at it as a business, not as kind of a side job.
I think you're right, because at first I was like, is this just too good to be true? But what happens is I get presented with a lot more deals than I'm very, very particular. And that's almost a curse though at this point, because especially in this market, right? If it's not going to be a home run, I'm not really interested in it.
No, it's great that you know that now, though. I mean, I'm like that now. I'm not doing a flip if I'm not making 100. It's not even a question. I'd like to make 200, but it just depends on the price point, that we're in. But it's really important to know now. Of course, you could do a first flip, mess up, not make a lot of money, and still learn a lot. But having the patience to say no to deals is really important, especially as a newer investor, and important for your family too, because you don't want to take one where you're like, I'm not really sure about this one. That's not going to feel good for anybody.
Absolutely. And also, I really, truly am still a stay-at-home mom. I have my youngest at home still.
They're not old. Your kids are not old. Yeah.
Ultra involved in my kids' schools who are in 2nd and 3rd grade. And that's how I want it to be. So if I'm taking on a project, when you're talking ROI, I'm also thinking ROIT. Like, what's the return investment on my time here? And if I'm spending my time here, is it going to yield enough that it makes sense versus being at my kids' school or baking brownies for their whatever, Because when you are doing a flip, if you're doing it how we're talking about doing it, right, where we're kind of playing the general contractor and just putting the subs in, then you really are spending a lot of time paying attention to that. So it's definitely a trade-off. But then I like to do it as fast as possible. So that's huge. It's only ever taken me like 6 weeks to flip a house.
But this is so important for any parent with younger kids, 2, 3 kids, to say, like, you can do this. You can work out the times. Only 10 episodes before this that will be released when this comes out, we had Lindsay Duguay on. She has 3 kids. They're all little. She's also, runs the ER and is a doctor. Wow. So it's like, you can do it. So people listening should know, like, there is a path forward. You just have to kind of do the education. Did you feel on your first one that you were, I don't know, didn't really know what you were doing, but you were going to figure it out together? Like you said, you're bringing your husband in a lot, and the numbers made sense where we can figure it out together.
1,000% right, Jonathan, right? Like, we're just going to take one step and we're going to do it. And one thing that was funny about how little I knew is my father-in-law, who was our general contractor, is extremely nice, but he'd come in and be like, why did you do the floors before you painted? And I'm like, well, the floor people could come and I'm trying to do it fast. So
that's a really good point, though. There's a certain cadence to how things are to be done on a flip, and you can really make the contractors mad, if you're doing electrical before plumbing, whichever they want. But like, the world didn't end.
The world did not end. We still made lots of money, and it was just kind of me covering my bases, right? And that was our 4th property, was a townhouse. And my father-in-law, same thing, like, you're not doing this in the right order. I'm like, but we're going to get it done.
Yeah.
It's with respect that he's saying that. And I think there's a lot to taking constructive criticism. And I absolutely do, right? And there's a time and a place, though. So, like, when we're mid-project, I'm like, I'm just going to need you to tell me this at the end. Like, right now, we just got to get it done. And that house was amazing. That was on the MLS. My 4th property showed up. I woke up one morning and Zillow had texted me, or whatever they do, email, that there was a townhouse in downtown Westchester and it came on for $175. So I called an agent that I had never worked with, but had met at an investor meetup. And I just knew that he was like really very like a go-getter, right? And I was like, hi, I don't know if you know me, but I want to buy this house in Westchester. Do you think we could put an offer in on it? And he's like,
And
do you want to?
so now realtors everywhere are like, where's Laura when I'm just sitting at home and like a property pops up? Hi, I've never met you. Let's go buy this property. It's a realtor's dream.
So he goes, do you want to go see it? I'm like, I don't need to. And he goes, we should probably see it. So we met over, which was amazing. So 15 minutes later, we went over there, and an hour later, we had the offer submitted.
So that's a sign of a great real estate agent. Obviously, I run a big team. I've been an on-market license for 10 years, but we won't write sight unseen offers unless it's a truly out of state and they've had somebody else come to the property. We don't even really want to rely on our videos because a lot of the time, you can't tell some of the dynamics. And we've had people bid sight unseen, and then they come in and they're like, well, the bedrooms are too small. And we're like, but we sent you the floor plan and we did a video and it still doesn't work. That's just a sign of a really smart person to tell you like, hey, I know you're really excited to go, but like the property's right there. We live in the same town. Let's just go see it, make sure everything checks out. Townhouse, you don't have to worry about a basement. So that's definitely helpful. You have more leverage to know things are going to be okay. But yeah, I think that's just more good advice out there.
Yeah, he was definitely, it was great to see it. In my case, because it was a townhouse, the disclosure had enough to know like the
Right.
main things were in good shape. I'm like, I'm planning to gut it anyway because it was disgusting. But
yeah,
it worked. So I budgeted for worst case scenario, but I understood where he was coming from. Like, let's go see it. So
yeah. Got to do a smell test and it looks bad. Like, oh, okay, I didn't know that was coming, but sure.
That is absolutely true, right? So we did that, and he called the guy, which 175 in our town, Westchester, is completely unheard of. He called the agent. He's like, I got a full price offer. We offered cash because we had a HELOC. And that was my first time ever closing in cash like that. What a breeze. I think I signed 2 lines and like passed the paper across the table. Yeah. I'm like, the rich get richer.
Closings are so much better when it's cash. It takes 5 minutes instead of an hour.
It was amazing. And he goes, shut it down. My buyer is giving you your asking price. And the agent was listing it for his brother. It was just a unique situation. And he did. He's like, all right, I'll take it. So we closed that. I think it was like 2 weeks later. And it took about 6 weeks to renovate that because the holidays were in there. And we bought it for $175, put $30,000 into it, and sold it for a record-breaking $305.
Wow, on a townhouse. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's walking distance to like the little downtown. And the townhouse was 900 square feet. You'll appreciate this one, though. I was just starting to learn about midterm rentals at that time, and Burr. So my brain was telling me, you should keep this. But the HOA fees were telling me I should not keep this.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, before I had decided, I put it on MyKey. So I was like examining every possible exit. And MyKey, if for anyone that doesn't know, is like a midterm rental, corporate rental site type or insurance rental type thing. So 30-day plus stay. I also looked at what the long-term rental was. So I brought a local property management team in to tell me what it would be for a long-term rental. So long-term rent on that, on the high side, would have been $2,100. I threw it up on MyKey, completely forgot about it, didn't even have pictures up. The day after I went under contract to sell it, a MyKey insurance agent reached out to me and said, we'll offer you $5,600 a month for 6 months. I'm like, I just sold the property.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So now midterm, you're like, midterms can work. I like midterm, right?
Oh, yeah. A lot can be said for insurance rentals, especially but I think they're pretty inconsistent. But
yeah, that's a home run, but that's not necessarily going to keep happening.
I would have 100% taken that though.
Yeah, I want to take it right now. I don't care what it is. I just want to take it. I'm not involved, but I'm taking that deal.
Right? I'm like, shoot, how do I cancel it? And then what is wild is I got a midterm rental for another unit in that complex. So talk about relationships. I had met another agent who owned 1 or 2 of those. And I was like, hey, I have this midterm rental. And she ended up taking it. So it's just about awesome. Relationship building. Like, this doesn't work for me, but who can I help?
Yeah. So where do you guys go from here? You've had a pretty quick voyage in and you've learned a lot. Like, what do you want to do long term in the next year, 2 years, 3 years with the investing and what you've built so far?
Such a good question. So, well, the profits from house 3 and 4 went into buying our second Airbnb, which is a lot bigger and more expensive. So if we're just talking about the learning that has gone into it, looking back, that was ultra capital heavy because we put 25% down. The house cost $605,000. So whatever the math is, I think it was like $160,000 we sunk into that. I don't know that that was the best use of our capital. It's a gorgeous house. We love having it. It's waterfront, but I don't know if that was the best. So but you talk about that was maybe a mistake, but it'll make an excellent flip. We bought it for 605. It just appraised for 670, but houses in the area with appraisal gaps are going over 800 just because of the community.
Yeah.
So are we going to sell it? Are we going to keep it? Is the question right now. And if we were to use that money to buy several other vacation rentals in places that had more of a year-round appeal, because in beach towns like Bethany Beach or where we have our other ones, Ocean City, Maryland, it really dies off in the winter. So this will be our first winter with this bigger house. So we'll kind of see how it performs after the holidays. We're already getting bookings for this upcoming summer, but it's always reevaluating, right? So is this the best use of this money? How could I use it in a better way? What I'm looking for now, I'd love to do a flip or a burr in our area, but like I said, I'm pretty selective. There's a lot of different people that are helping us look for those. So that's kind of what I'm looking for to gain capital now, is probably look for another flip property in our area. I'd also think about burring something.
Yeah, but that's really good introspection on your investing journey to look at it and say, maybe, 2.5 years in, you haven't figured out all the potential financing options that could make it easier. But the important thing that I think you did is you invested in a really strong asset. So even if it's cash heavy to get that new beach house, your asset's already worth way more. On the appraisal value, you're up 70. On the realistic value, with the way that people are bidding, you could be up 150. So you've acquired an asset that maybe you dunked a little more in, but it's more important to have a good asset than good financing on a very so-so asset. So I think that's important for people to know, because I find myself calling myself an asset hunter. I don't do as much, over calculation on the numbers. I like what I like. I understand where the long-term scale is. And I'm interested in the asset itself and what it can do. Multiple exit strategies. Like you said, you're doing well short term, but you can also sell it if you want. You could repurpose it. There's a lot of options there.
Yeah, not as appealing to midterm renters. So that's been one thing, because I have no problem filling the Bethany house, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms in the off season. Very affordable. This one, not as affordable. But thanks for saying that. I'm definitely I feel like I'm always hypercritical of what we're doing to make the most and best of it. So we'll see where this one goes.
Yeah, but that's smart business. I think you're always looking for highest and best use, but sometimes it takes a little while to find it. And again, if you're going to find it and your asset is strong, then at least you're going to be okay. If you're looking to find highest and best use, and there's really short-term doesn't work, midterm doesn't work, long-term rentals are a dunk. I can't sell it now. The rates are too high. You're in trouble. So at least you have out strategies, even though if the cash flow is limited in the winter, you still know, well, if we put it up, it's going to do fine. Especially if rates are coming down a little, then you're looking even better.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So we'll see what happens. I haven't been mad about seeing those rates come down. We bought that at 7.625. I'm like, when can I refinance?
Yeah, refi. I always say, now I feel once 6s are a thing again, I think everybody who was looking at 6s as high before, realizing it's not going back to 3 or 4, are going to think 6s. 6s are good historically, but it's going to make it easy. You can go from 7.5 if you're at a low 6. That's a good time to refinance, unless you really know it's going to go to 5.5. But could make a big difference. So
what I've been trying to do in this downturn because our market wise, I haven't picked up, we had an offer in what would have been great, but we got beat out last week. So we've been putting offers, but they're relatively conservative. And I think what I'm focusing on now is what served me so good in those first 6 months before I got in is just educating myself. So, because I don't know what I don't know. So on doc right now is Raising Private Capital by Matt Faircloth, and then Wealth Without Cash by Pace. Because I feel like reading those and just expanding my knowledge can supercharge things. And then next year, my third little guy will be in kindergarten. So I'll have a little bit more time, freedom to be able to be more involved with real estate. So right now, my focus is really setting a foundation of learning, team people so that when our kids are more involved in school, I can just really hopefully take off.
Yeah, I've had both Matt and Liz on the podcast, and they are really excellent at finding money. Both of their episodes talk about it. And I'm almost finished with Pace's book as well. I saw Pace at BPCon, and obviously I know of him, but I was really impressed because you just want to know all the strategies, I think, especially for you, if you're going to get in these opportunities where you're walking down a street and you may have a direct to seller opportunity. You want to have at least kind of a toolbox of things that you have available that could work, because then you can match more of what a seller's needs are and find a win-win when you're kind of up to date on the more creative strategies that are out there.
It's amazing how you can go from zero knowledge to, like none of this was from college. None of this was taught. It's all books, podcasts, or hearing other people's experiences. And once, like you said, you're armed with that knowledge, and what I love about it is you can be more of service to other people. And it kind of works both ways, where I can help you, and then in turn that helps me too. But it can be a win-win all around just by learning different strategies. Because, right now, the best I have is you sell your house to me and then I'll fix it up and sell it. Where really,
Right.
Could we do a novation? Could we do a seller finance?
Right.
I just didn't have those on the menu before. But if I can learn them, I think that can really help everyone involved.
Yeah, I agree. Before I ask you my final question, I just want to point out something that we talked about before we hopped on, but I think podcasts in general are so great for people, because you're going to tell this story. There's going to be somebody in a town, again, that you're never going to meet, and they're going to hear this. They have 2 kids and they didn't think that they could do it. And they're going to listen to your story and they're going to do it. You may never know them. Hopefully they'll let you know, like, hey, you inspired me. I listened to you on this podcast, but you may not. And just getting that out there and being transparent the way that you are on Instagram, I think is really, really helpful to people, because it's very clear that you're authentic. So people can connect with you much easier to say, like, look, it's not all perfect, but she's getting the job done. So I think that's great. And it's been great to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to have me, because so when you messaged me to be on, I was so honored, because I've seen your lineup of people and it's impressive, right? And then I could start listening to the podcast and I'm like, this is amazing. How did I land myself on your show?
Yeah.
So I
found you on Instagram, as we said. And like I said to you earlier, I spend a lot of time on Instagram. I consider it research. I don't find like I have a social media problem. Like, I'm there looking, like we were saying, to learn stuff, find out who's doing what, and find other investors who I think would be a good fit. But I really felt that your authentic nature of what you were building and how you were getting it out to people was really important for people to hear. So my last question for you is, if you could tell a brand new flipper, they've never flipped a property, what would be one piece of advice that you would give them right now? Rates are still a little high, but they look like they're going to come down. So there's going to be opportunities to buy. What's the best piece of advice that you could give somebody who wants to flip based on your experience over the last 2.5 years?
That you absolutely can do it with the right people in your circle, and you can be open to learning. It's just one foot in front of the other and figure it out as you go. And probably to leave yourself enough margin, buy it at the right price, so that if those things do happen that you don't anticipate, there's a little buffer there. And then that you absolutely, absolutely can. It's just surrounding yourself by the right people and just taking it one step at a time. One quick step at a time. Don't drag your feet.
Yeah, that's perfect. All right, Laura, thanks so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right. That was Laura Sides. You can find her at Sides_investing on Instagram. I can guarantee you she'll get back to you in the DMs if you ask a good question, because that's how we connected, and now we're staying connected there. So that's where you can find her. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Green. And I just want to remind you, and this is always an uncomfortable part, I don't want you to think that I'm begging for you to like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do for the podcast, leave a 5-star review. But if you like the podcast and you think it adds value in the real estate investing sphere, then just do me a personal favor. Like the podcast, follow it, share it when you can with your friends.
And be so kind as to write a 5-star review if you believe it deserves a 5-star review up against what else is out there. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you keep listening.